You're listening to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast, where we discuss whatever the fuck we want to. And yes, we can put sex and drugs and Jesus all in the same bed and still be all right at the end of the day. My name is Deepen, and I'll be interviewing guests from every corner of this world as we dig into topics that are too risque for the morning show, as we strive to help you understand what's really going on in your life. There is nothing off the table, and we've got a lot to talk about, so let's dive right into this episode.
Yuki, my good buddy Yuki, is the co-host of the Modern Day Hippie podcast. He's an experienced psychonaut, and he's also a former alcoholic. Yuki is one of the few people I've come across who's been able to use psychedelics to break addictions to alcohol and drugs. Very interesting shit there. Psychedelics have been a cornerstone of Yuki's life for the past 3 years. He loves sharing how to consume the drugs, man, in a safe and responsible way. So in this episode, we're going to talk about drugs, man, fucking drugs. We're going to talk about testing your drugs. Well, I will tell you what fentanyl is, how fentanyl is actually also found in weed, y'all. Yes, people be putting fentanyl in weeds, bitches. We're talking about help for addictions, mental health, and discovering your spirituality. My favorite part, of course, is Yuki's 10 Commandments of Drugs, which we will touch on briefly. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, babies. Hello, all of you beautiful and delicious truffles out there, and welcome back to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. I'm your queer, fabulous, Holy Ghost anointed and appointed hostess with the mostest, recording from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I'm here today with my dear friend Yuki. And he's the host of the Modern Day Hippie podcast. And today we're going to be talking about drugs, man. Drugs.
Yes, sir. One of my favorite topics of conversation, and one that I just don't think is talked enough about in like a truly just honest and truthful way. So, that's one of like my passions in life and a big part of the reason why I started my own podcast.
Hell's fuck yeah. Before I let Yuki give y'all his background and everything like that, the very first episode from his podcast, which is called the Modern Day Hippie podcast. The very first episode is the 10 Commandments of like drug use. And so if you can't tell, this dude is passionate about the drugs, man. Totally, totally passionate, but from a healthy, holistic, point of view. This is not how they show on like, Drugs Inc., the different websites. Everybody on drugs is strung out on something with their teeth falling out and running across the field naked and robbing banks and shit. That is an aspect of it, but that's not.
Yes, definitely.
That's not all of it. So Yuki, tell us, who are you?
Great question. I'm still trying to figure that out for myself to this very day. Yeah, I mean, in the context of, my journey with drugs and that whole world. So I am from a culture and grew up in a culture where drinking is just very normal and happens at almost every meal. Like, I'm not kidding when I say at breakfast or lunch, there's like a shot of homemade liquor that you're sipping throughout your meal. And that's just normal. That's like a normal part of life. That's something that I grew up with. And it's not like I was a little kid getting belligerently drunk, but it's just a culture that you're around, and alcohol is just something that just becomes a normal part of life. And I kind of just took that for granted. And so as I grew up and, went through like my high school, my college phase, like was a very copious drinker. Like, I enjoyed drinking. I was very social, everyone did it. And like, that was that. I just, I'm like, this is the way the world works. And I was enjoying it. I made the most of it. But then around 4 or 5 years ago, I started experimenting with some other substances, primarily psychedelics. So things like mushrooms and LSD. And that for me, I didn't know at the time, but that would be the start of a lifelong journey of learning that there are so many other like options and other substances outside of alcohol that can not only be like fun and social and a good time, but can actually have a very positive effect on myself, my life, and the people around me. And especially in the last year or two, like we've started to see so much promise in what's possible with some of these substances from like a therapeutic perspective, from helping people recover from different mental illnesses, things like that. And I mean, even for me, I essentially like accidentally like psychedelic myself into quitting alcohol. And so I went from being someone who like loved drinking to I haven't touched alcohol in about a year and a half now. And I literally have not looked back. And that's kind of it's very much become a theme of my life of trying to educate people on the fact that there are ways you can do other substances in a safe and responsible way and have fun with it like the whole way around it. I do want to contextualize everything that I talk about that, like you mentioned, drugs where you're like strung out and like doing crazy, crazy shit. There are definitely drugs that will do that to you. And those are not ones that we advocate for at all, ever. There's a big reason why the majority of the topics that we talk about are psychedelics in particular. Just kind of generally speaking, those do tend to be like the safest substances. Of course, there's plenty of risks that go with those as well. But that also have the most positive benefits in the long run. Like it's at the point where I have like family members asking me about these substances and like how they can go on like shroom retreats or ayahuasca retreats to deal with some things that they're struggling with, like alcoholism or PTSD and things like that. And it's really beautiful that there are options that like truly work for these mental illnesses that we don't have good answers to right now, where it's like you can have a shrooms experience once and there are literally stories and studies of people effectively being cured from their depression or their PTSD, which is just like mind blowing. I can't believe that's real.
I believe it's all real, Yuki. And the thing is, now, I'm going to reference like the Christian Bible as I do. I ain't
Mhm.
a Christian. I despise what Christianity is and what it's become. I'm the most anti-Christian Christian you'll ever meet. But I'm all about Jesus and the Trinity, but I could give a fuck less about church.
Right.
If that works for you, people out there, it works for you, but all you ever really needed was God.
Yep.
And so, yeah, but in the Bible, it tells us, it poses a question, is there no balm in Gilead? Why then is not the affliction, the womb of my people healed? In other words, God is saying, look, bitches, I've given you like remedies to shit. I've given you medicines. I've given you counselors. I've given you every kind of fucking way out, but you're staying sick because you choose to remain sick. And that's exactly what God is saying. Cut the bullshit because you're not fooling him and really nobody else. And so if somebody has, say, a problem with alcohol, traditional therapy won't work. There's drugs out there like Contrave and things like that that are designed to wean people off of alcohol. That don't work. Psychedelics, man, there is what I'm excited about is that there's so many options on the table for people to be made whole. Everything I'm hearing about what you're saying is options, options, options. These are good options. Unfortunately, and I want to know what you think about this, a lot of times people choose options that do not serve them. So I say it
Right.
like this: options are the illusion of freedom, and people can become
Mm.
a slave to options before they
Right.
realize it. So, so if somebody picks up their phone, I'm a big advocate against cell phone use. I cannot
Mhm.
stand what technology has done to the human race. We don't need to wait for the Terminators to get here. They already are here in the form of Androids and iPhones. They've already taken over.
Right.
We've already been corrupted and sold. So a person can pick up their phone and look up healing modalities. They could look up an ayahuasca retreat. Or they could look up something
Yep.
to help them, or they could look up ways to go cater to vice. They could look up, bad drugs to go do or drugs that aren't going to be good for them. They could look up a whole bunch of sex to go have with random people they don't really even know, or they could go and do. You can use that damn thing for good or evil. The per
Yeah, it's the world at the palm of your fingertips, and it's like ultimately, I empathize a lot of what you said about technology, and ultimately, like I don't believe that technology is like net good or net bad. It is just a tool, and this tool further increases people's ability to do really good things and also really terrible things. And we see plenty of examples of that. Unfortunately, I think we see a lot more of the negative and the way that technology is built kind of preys on our impulses and things that we don't have a lot of conscious control over. But at the same time, like people have accomplished like incredible, beautiful things with technology and the internet.
well, it enhances, like you're saying, what you are. This is why I believe why God doesn't make a whole lot of people rich, because I don't think a lot of people could handle having that many options at their disposal. Okay, look at we have some billionaires now that make an absolute fool of themselves on a
Yeah.
daily basis. With it's like they're not even human. Okay, I'm talking about you, motherfucking Zuckerberg. Talking about you, Bezos. Talking about
Elon Musk.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of them
All
look
these jokers.
all of them look like aliens at this point.
Yeah.
I don't mean that insultingly, like literally. When the fuck could they last look human? And I was
No, exactly.
like, and I'm like, okay. Then I'm like, okay, I just can't even. And so my prayer for people is that they gain an understanding. Like I asked you, who are you? And you're like, that's a good point. That's a good question. I want people to think about shit. Think about how you can help yourself. You have so many options available
Yeah.
if you really, really want it. Psychedelics are a huge part of it. I was down in Mexico in Puerto
Hmm.
Vallarta last month doing ayahuasca.
Oh, amazing.
Did LSD, true LSD for the first time. I may have
Yeah.
taken a bit much because I did the whole square. I didn't think to cut the thing up. I just put the
Yep.
whole thing in my mouth and was like, chomp, 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 chomp. And then like 20 fucking minutes later, everything started moving on its own. It didn't even take 20 fucking minutes. It was like high for 24 hours. It was lovely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's one hell of an experience.
so I'm all here for the ceremonies.
Right.
Where do you think the intersectionality lies in between? And tell me, first of all, where do you stand spiritually? And where is the intersectionality of like spirituality and psychedelics?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually been delving into this angle of psychedelics a little bit more the past few months, and I'm still very early in that aspect of my journey. But for me, spiritually, like my family is a very like Orthodox Christian, but my parents didn't practice a whole lot, and they were very. It's just kind of like let me make my own decisions and figure things out from a religious perspective. And so growing up, was very like scientific, mathematical. So was very much like self-proclaimed atheist. In recent years, I've become more like agnostic. And I actually, about 2 years ago, I set myself a goal of starting to figure out like what spirituality means for me, because I do think there's more to life in the grand scheme of things than just like the day to day. And there are some things that are just very difficult to explain. And so what I'm aligning most with in recent months is more like Zen Buddhism and studying like Taoism and things like that, which to me is really a set of very valuable internal tools that allow people to lead a better life, whether it's specific like morals and goals they should strive for, but also very practical tools, things like meditation and mindfulness that have truly increased like the quality of my own life. And those are things that I've been like really grateful for. And I'm still, working on adopting and building my practices there. But I was talking to a friend recently who works in the psychedelic space and has been it's far more into Buddhism than I've been in like recent months. And he was saying how there is very much an overlap between these communities, but specifically the more like meditative, like Buddhist aspects of spirituality and combining that with psychedelics and experiences where people try to like create psychedelic-esque experiences, but without any drugs, any substances. And I recently had my first experience that I would describe as just that. I went to like a breathwork workshop where they do this thing called Wim Hof breathing, which is like a very like forceful, intentional like pace of breathing. And it's like intense. And when I was done with that, like my body was literally like buzzing. Like I felt like I had a true like body high, a body trip. And it's like the fact I was able to do that with just like guided breathing. Like, I don't know, this was like 7 a.m. on a Friday. Like I wasn't taking any drugs at that point. I'm like, hell no. It was a really incredible experience. And I know there's a lot of overlap of those communities. And frankly, that's something that I very much still want to explore because ultimately, I think the reason a lot of people take psychedelics is because it has that ability to like reframe your own reality and rewire your brain in a lot of ways. And the way I think about it, like every single one of us experiences reality in a slightly different way. And I say this quote that at this point, a lot of my friends and my girlfriend get like mad at me when I say it, which is you are the master of your own universe. and it's really like up to you, like the reality that you live in. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't realize this, and a lot of our perception of reality is very much shaped by these like unconscious filters and biases that are put into us by our family, our friends, our teachers, these things that we just don't even account for. And I think psychedelics has this really beautiful potential and opportunity to help people become aware of those filters and create completely new ones in a way that without them would take years or decades of really devoted practice to like consciously start changing your perception of the reality that you're experiencing.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to comment on. Conscious living is super huge.
Yeah.
There was a person in my life once upon a time, and I would pose a question like, why do you think this or why do you think that? They never could give me an answer. The amount of people running around here living on a tape
On like yeah, on like autopilot.
autopilot, true, but it's a step further than autopilot, man, because it's not just like a pre-recorded thing, it's somebody else's intention.
Mm,
So
right.
if you watch a bunch of porn and that's where you learn sex from, that's somebody
Yeah.
else's interpretation of porn. If you if you only know Jesus from what the priest is telling you on Sunday, well, I heard it said in this documentary, I was watching the Secrets of Hillsong documentary on Hulu, and they were saying like, like the Bible in text cannot interpret themselves. Somebody has to
Right.
interpret. It's just sitting there on paper. So if you're only going off of what a priest is telling you,
Hmm.
you're living your religious experience based on somebody else. You know,
Right. Exactly.
and social media and everything, all those reels just steal people's consciousness away from them
Yeah.
because it's an emotional spike. And when you have anything that makes you feel tingling emotional, then in hypnotherapy, because I'm a licensed hypnotist, I studied this shit intensely. And
Oh, awesome.
that's what we call a state of hypersuggestibility. And when you're
Mhm.
hypersuggestible, you'll take things for truth even when they're not.
Right.
You, Yuki, are more. This is an interesting conundrum. Here's an interesting conundrum. Interesting conundrum for me. I'm very close to God. I've studied, and this is not because I've studied, it's because I've lived this life with Him, with the highs and the lows of being homeless and
Right.
everything that's, being visited with angels and my personal dreams and revelations. I know me some Jesus. Not in the church, outside the church. I know God.
Right.
Your spirit, the way you carry yourself, is actually more God-like, okay, and more Christ-like than the motherfuckers in church. It is something that I've scratched my bald ass head on for like years because I'm like, how can this be that non-church Christian, non-Christian folk are more Christ-like than the church people?
Oh, I completely agree, though. I mean, granted, it's all very much, through the filters of what we see, like in the news or in our like personal lives. But like even some of the people I went to high school with who were like self-proclaimed very religious, like I don't know, they were the first people like doing some like wild and crazy shit. And I don't know, I was just like trying to be a good kid and studious and things like that. And I think there's a lot to be said about, like, developing your own morals and values that aren't necessarily being fed to you, by someone's interpretation of the Bible or by your parents. And I've also kind of scratched my head and try to figure out, what leads some people to develop certain morals versus other ones. And, it very much comes down to life circumstances. And I was lucky to grow up with, like a loving family and a very fortunate life. And not everyone has that. But no, I empathize a lot with that. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy, I think, in modern religion. And like I think my goal for my life is like whether there is a God, whether religion is real or in what capacity it's real, like when I die, you know, if the Christian interpretation of religion is the true one, I would still hope to have lived my life with enough like kindness and goodness and value that even if I was not a practicing Christian, like I have led my life in a way that I and like a deity or an entity like can be like proud of.
I think we're all going to be shocked on Judgment Day. I had a dream the other night, and you'll always hear me say that because I've been like my primary gift is dreaming. I've been dreaming since I was like about 5 years old. I mean, I dream, child. I see things unseen, and they
Yeah.
then come true, and they're just truth in them. I had this dream the other night that I was in like this church. No surprise, I'm in a church, but all and these like major, very popular like mega church pastors and preachers were there.
Right.
And this church though, which was not, it wasn't like a tiny church, but it had that spirit, that essence of a tiny church in it. But they put those people on the back row. They put all the major preachers that would
Oh,
normally
of course.
normally that doesn't happen. Normally, a big time televangelist shows up, they get the golden carpet shit rolled out for them, the red carpet treatment, and well, fuck it, for them, it is like a golden carpet because they're literally walking in $1,000,000 shoes they paid
Yeah. Yeah.
for money. But yeah, I thought to myself, well, this is an interesting conundrum. That they would be put on the back burner like that. And so I think times are getting ready to shift, in that arena, which leads me to my other compliment I was going to give you, my Yuki. I applaud you on how attentive you are to your pursuit of spiritual knowledge and enlightenment. Here is the shade that I'm going to throw at the world. I'm giving you light and I'm giving them shade. Look at the camera. Look, y'all fuck around out here on these streets, chasing after every damn thing you want: money, careers, sex, more sex, dating, drugs, sleep, video games, whatever the fuck it is that you like to devour your time with. When it comes to spirituality, I cannot tell you, Yuki, how many people I talk to. And I'm like, well, what do you think about this? It's almost like they're waiting for God or Buddha or whoever to come and find them. It's like this strange sense of entitlement that's mixed with like this rage and bitterness that people have towards anything that's unseen. And they're like, well, I'll figure it out one day, or it's like I'm here and God come and find me. It's almost like they feel like God owes it to them to come and find them or something like that.
Right. They feel entitled to it.
Yeah, I don't understand, because I'm like, but wait a minute. You picked up your phone and you went and found XYZ experience. You scheduled time for this. You planned this. Why is it when it comes to spirituality, people are like, well, we'll get to it when we get to it. I don't like that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it, and it means a lot. And again, like I'm so early in my journey with this, but
But the fact
I
that
think it
but you give a damn in an active way, that's not common.
right. Yeah, and this is like a pretty recent development for me, right? Like I'm in my mid 20s, which like early by some standards, but for me, it's like okay, I'm the oldest I've ever been, obviously. For me, it was really hard to figure out like where to start. So even like in my case, like I'm a pretty big reader. Like I enjoy reading books, and like I couldn't like I just wanted a book that like broke down like just you know 50 different religions in like plain English, and I could kind of like understand what each one was about and try to kind of start making my not decisions, but seeing like what spoke more to me and what I'd want to dive deeper into. And like I couldn't find anything like that. What I ended up doing was, I found like a Zen Buddhist center in my home city, and I was like, okay, I saw they have like a Saturday morning, kind of their equivalent of like a service, like a meditation session and stuff. And I went to one of those, and like it was pretty cool. Like there were things about it that I really liked. There were things that I didn't like. And when I'm back home, I will probably go a couple more times. But I think, especially having that experience with other people as well, like I think we're so isolated as people in the present day, and you hear all these things about like the loneliness epidemic and everyone just on their phones, like scrolling and living other people's lives. I think honestly, like a big part of figuring out spirituality is just discussing it with other people. And funnily enough, I've had some very in-depth conversations with people like about spirituality, about Buddhism, about mindfulness while I was on drugs. And these were incredibly memorable and impactful conversations that I truly got a lot out of because I was in such an impressionable state of mind, and I was having like a productive, intelligent conversation with someone who I trust and has their own experiences in this field. And so I just like I'm craving more conversations like that because I think ultimately that's what will help guide my journey through this, whether it's friends of mine who I didn't even know were spiritual in a certain way, but I found out in random conversation they were, or it's like trying to, meet more people through this like Buddhist center that I went to once and it was cool. I'm like, let me try going a couple more times and see what kind of conversations I can start having. And even like, for example, my mom recently started going to church again. Like she's in her 50s. I think she was really craving like a community to like lean into and like find a new one. And she's been really enjoying the communal aspects. Like she's not super into the religious aspects of it, but like the community is incredible. And I have yet to go with her to like mass or to a sermon. But it's like I want to have that experience with her and see it through her eyes and see what she gets out of it and what she appreciates about it. Because all these different religions, all these practices, like they do hold a lot of meaning for a lot of people. And even if I don't necessarily believe in what they believe, I do think there can be a lot of good, particularly in these like communal gatherings on a regular basis.
I'm all for the community aspect of it because we do see that when we research through the old like Hebrew texts and things like that. It's just it depends on the place. So I know when I was, at a church attendee, at some point, I think that I began to make an idol out of the preacher and out of the church building and maybe out of the community experience itself, not consciously, but I think at some point my values became corrupted because of what a big deal, all the communal gatherings, the class for this,
Right.
dinner for this. You have so much activity, so much energy was put into meeting and congregating with people, into the priest, I mean, to the preacher, into the choir, to into everything. It's like God got mixed up in that somehow. So if people want to go for the community, I certainly can't tell them no. But I would always be like rechecking, where your values are and be sure you haven't slipped into a state of worshiping the people or the communing of the people or the preacher and God like down here somewhere and not in the picture at all. So, we always need to
Right.
check our value system. So that's super sweet that you want to go and hang with your mom like that. And so we're the next, I'm going to ask you about the first of the 10 commandments is testing your drugs and things like that.
Yes.
But
100%.
before we get on that, the last thing I'm going to say in terms of like all the Jesus and spirituality that we've been talking about, and I appreciate you being comfortable enough to go down that tangent with me. I wish people would have more conversations about spirituality because for fuck's sake, we talk about every goddamn thing else under the sun. And I mean, literally, I'm gonna say it again. We talk about every goddamn thing else under the fucking sun. I'm gonna say it one more time. We talk about every fucking bitch ass thing under the sun. But when it comes to spirituality, it's like mum's the word. Today, Satan, we're gonna talk about everything, including the sweet baby Jeebus and Buddha and Gandhi, whoever the fuck else is, let's get some spiritual conversation going. Shit. But don't wait till you're about to die. I was talking to this person the other day, this woman, and I was like, okay, Jesus, right? Because she was like, or whatever the case may be. And they were like, yeah, we're getting up in the ages now. We should get that sorted out. I was like, no, bitch, you completely missed the whole point. You completely missed the whole point. It's not about waiting till you're about to kick the bucket and being like, oh, better get right so I can go to heaven. No, it's about a part of you being part of us all is spirit and soul. If you don't develop that while you are living, even from a super young age, then you're going to be out of balance because you're not feeding an important part of you. So y'all, getting right with God or finding who you are spiritually and whatever you're going to believe, be it God or not, it's not about waiting till you're old and about to die. It's about doing it today because you just have to because it's a part of who you are. You don't just I mean, how cheap is that? God, I haven't given a fuck about you all this time, but I'm about to meet you, so I guess I'll get it right now. I mean, does it get any more faith?
Yeah, no, the intention there is so just misaligned. That's a bad joke.
Right, I can't even do anything with that. Lord Jesus, I have tried to talk to your people. All right, so y'all, the 10 commandments of drugs, man. And so I just think it's so cool that that was the very first episode of your podcast. Talk about laying a foundation.
Right.
Yuki says commandment one is to test your drugs. I use Dan Safe as well.
Yep.
And so tell us
Amazing. Love to hear it.
right? Tell us about a commandment one, please.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we talk about, like a lot of our stories and content is about how drugs can be like fun and can have these crazy stories and experiences, but all of that can only happen when you're being safe and you're being responsible with it. And like that is the first message, like first and foremost, that I want to drive home in everything that we talk about when it comes to substances is that there are certain substances you should never do, that I will never do, I will never try. And as far as like testing your drugs, like why that is the number one commandment is because sometimes you just don't know what you're getting. Actually, you never know exactly what you're getting unless you put in the work to figure it out yourself. Because, you hear all these stories of people dying from fentanyl and how that's just like a national crisis. And some of that is people intentionally taking fentanyl, but most people, it's their drugs being cut with something that they don't know is there. And that's something that ends up like seriously hurting them or even killing them. And that's like that's terrible. Nobody wants that. And the last thing we want to do is, like encourage our listeners to maybe try these experiences for the first time and get them in a situation where they take something that they didn't intend or they have an experience where they get hospitalized or God forbid something worse. And so like really safety above all else. Like that's all that matters. Like you can have a good time, but you need to make sure that you will put yourself in a place where you can create that experience for yourself and where you can get these benefits from these substances of rewiring your brain and really approaching life in a different way. You can't do that if you're hurting or if you're dying from something that you're taking. So really just precaution above everything else. Like that is the number one thing above having fun, above whatever.
And dancesafe.org it was a website that's all about like positive drug education. You get like fentanyl test strips and shit from there, and
Yeah. No,
fentanyl.
and it's a really great organization. Like it's a nonprofit. They ship all their stuff in like inconspicuous boxes. So if you're worried about that, and I honestly, the other reason we put it first was because so few people actually test their drugs. Like I know a lot of people who enjoy taking all sorts of drugs, and the number of them who actually test their drugs is just so alarmingly low. And I just feel like I have a responsibility as someone who really enjoys this space and, I would say is an advocate for it that just, if I can convince like one or two more people to test their drugs than would have otherwise, then like that alone is a win for me because that could very well be saving somebody's life.
Child, let me read this definition for fentanyl because where were we in like June? In January, I found out that two people who I know had died from fentanyl. We're talking about people, in their 30s. These weren't old people. I be trying to tell people, I've been to a lot of funerals and most of the people have been under 40. You know, it's not really old people that's dying these days.
Yeah.
But, it's young people. You really got to be careful about that. It's not just from fentanyl. So at DEA.gov, Drug Enforcement Agency, y'all know I have no love for no kind of drug enforcement agency. I got
No, sir.
like 4 felonies and most of those are drug related. Bitch, y'all know I'm about that life. I am about that motherfucking life. Okay, but education is education. I could at least use these motherfuckers for this. They at least worth this. So the definition on the DEA's website is fentanyl is a potent synthetic opioid drug approved by the Food and Drug Administration for use as an analgesic, which is pain relief, and an anesthetic. It is approximately 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin as an analgesic. In other words, y'all, it don't take very much of fentanyl to fuck you off or send you over the edge.
Yeah, and then there's also, I think it's carfentanil, which is like 50 or 100 times more potent than fentanyl. And you
Girl.
can go on Google, look up pictures of like how much just like powder of like fentanyl versus carfentanil it would take to kill you. For the carfentanil, it's like almost microscopic. Like there's almost nothing in that vial, which is just terrible. No, and the other thing to remember, I think there's such a big disconnect between us as like drug consumers and how the drugs are actually produced. And a lot of these substances that especially have these risks of being cut with something like fentanyl, they tend to be powders that people are snorting. And I have to remind myself all the time that these powders are made by some random dude, like in literally a fucking kitchen, following some like random recipe, just like pouring shit together. Like it's literally some dude, probably in South America, like in a literal fucking kitchen making your drugs. So if that doesn't sketch you out enough to like test your drugs and find out what's actually in there, then I don't know what will.
I can't speak to South America. I know the drugs that I get in Puerto Vallarta are all run by the Jalisco cartel, and so I don't
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. So South America is sketchy. It's sketchy. I haven't been there yet, but I am set to head to, well, fuck, at least Central America next year on a cruise. So I'm getting on down
Nice.
there. I think Belize and Honduras or something like that. I don't think that's
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful area. No, and also like nothing against people in that area. It's like, but my point is that there's like an individual person who's following some random like recipe with like weird chemicals to make your drugs. Like when you're cooking dinner, like, you're kind of following the recipe. Maybe you're substituting something here, something there. Like all it takes is some dude being like, oh, this ingredient's like too far out of the reach. I'm lazy. Let me just put something else in. Like,
uh
that's crazy, dude.
the shit's not regulated.
No, no, as far as unregulated as one could be.
Y'all be careful where you're getting your shit from. Like Drake said in that one song, if what do you say? If it's coming from a nigga I don't know, that I don't trust it. You better.
And even if you trust the dude, like, you still gotta test it. I mean, I've been fortunate to buy from some people who I really trust and some very, like, established dealers and whatnot, and they say they test everything. That doesn't stop me from testing all my drugs. Like, it's also just that peace of mind, and once you build that habit of testing your drugs, like, now it feels weird for me to take a drug without testing it. Like, it makes me feel just a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm not gonna, like, totally mentally let go of that possibility compared to if I tested that drug and was 100% sure that, "Okay, there's no fentanyl in this, and this is actually the drug that I, intended on buying." There's definitely some peace of mind that goes into that, where you can fully enjoy the experience and just kind of let yourself go as opposed to worrying about it in the back of your head.
Also, amen, brother, 100%. Hallelujah. Felt like it's church on a Sunday morning. Glory. Glory be to Jesus. I'd also want y'all to know and understand that just because you smoking weed, that shit can be cut too. I need y'all to understand this. I've heard of people putting fentanyl in weed. I've heard of it.
Please.
It from my understanding, when you go to light it, it has a popping sound, like a clicking sound. I don't know, my mic's probably not
Yeah.
gonna pick it up because it filters out everything so beautifully. But it'll have like a popping, cracking sound to it that isn't uncommon for weed. Yes, bitch, there are people out there that can put fentanyl and other additives even into the plant. I don't care if it's a bud, bitch. Be careful. Don't think just because you smoking weed, you can just go get it from some homie, child. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's one I haven't even heard of, and that's terrifying. Like, yeah, I don't know. There's some crazy shit out there, and it all comes back to being as safe or as cautious as you can. Like, it's hard to be truly 100% sure every single time, but I think just by building that habit of testing any drug you take, like that's still 99% better than like anyone else and what they're doing. And it's like it's interesting as I've gotten older, I realize just how prevalent like drugs are. Like I hang out with a lot of people, like a lot of, adults and students and all kinds of people. I'm like, almost everyone's doing like some kind of drug. And, most people will be pretty fine their whole lives. And, all these bad stories we hear about, like those are obviously terrible events that happen. And I think those are more like the outlier situations, at least I like to think. But, a lot of people smoke weed or do psychedelics totally unplanned and untested and come out of it, mostly fine or totally fine for the rest of their lives.
I don't know. I think that when people begin to get into this lull, into this mindset that it can't happen to them is when it does.
Mm,
Or when they're at their most
right.
if for no other reason than the lackadaisical, laissez-faire, carefree ass attitude
Right.
about it, because then you're losing respect for the game that you're playing. You know, when
Yeah.
and that attitude is what gets your ass caught up, is because you don't think it's gonna happen to you. You think you're too high above it. You know, you don't think that day will come. I mean, true outliers, because out of all the people I know who do drugs, I've only known 2 to have died from fentanyl, but damn it, I mean, one of them was a dealer, and the other one, was, just wasn't a dealer, but it's like the fact that it got that close to me, was really
Yeah.
like, and I used to do drugs. Well, I've done drugs probably with both of them. All it would have
Right.
was for me to just have had been with them on the night that they got the fentanyl, like, and so I take a more humble approach to it. I'm all like, this shit could happen, you
Yep.
know, fuck all that. It's not worth it. You It seemed like, but tell me what your current view on alcohol is, because you did the psychedelics, you got a deliverance from it that I guess you weren't planning to get, but nevertheless, that look, the Lord touched you regardless. Hallelujah. And
Yeah.
so now, do you? Because in researching you, it seems like you kind of have this alcohol ain't everything, you know, attitude or mindset or point of view. Can you
Yeah.
clarify why you believe this?
Yeah. In my experience and experiences of people around me, nothing good has ever come of alcohol, like ever. I and if you look at the statistics and the data to back it up, it is like alcohol is truly one of the most dangerous drugs, both to you as a user and to the people around you in terms of risk to your health, like risk of death, things like that. And like that to me, combined with the fact that it is by far the most prevalent and socially acceptable substance, is just absolutely mind blowing. Like alcohol is an institution. Alcohol is like almost a part of being human for most people. And, a big part of my work and what I do is I do want to show people that there is more to life than alcohol. And so for me personally, I don't drink at all anymore. I honestly don't think I ever will because as soon as I stopped drinking, I realized how shitty drinking made me feel. Not only like the next day or 2 days after, but even just drinking habitually, like, multiple times a week. It really created this like subtle layer of brain fog and not feeling quite at 100%. And actually, when I made the decision to quit drinking, I was like, all right, let me try 2 months sober. I'll see how I feel after that and I'll reassess. And man, I felt amazing after those 2 months. Like, I never felt that good in my life. And then there were one or two instances after that where it's like a special occasion. I drank a little bit. It reminded me how horrible I felt. And every time since I like officially quit drinking that I've tried it again, I'm like, it's a great reminder of why I don't do this anymore and why I really just dislike it personally. I will say I did have some kind of helpful aids that have ensured that I didn't go back to drinking. So first off, my like girlfriend and longtime partner, she doesn't drink either. She's never really been a fan of alcohol in the first place. So we both stopped drinking together. And then we also found something to replace alcohol with. So for us, like when we're going out with friends and they're drinking, I'll do like a little bit of shrooms. I'm not going to trip super hard, but it just kind of, makes me a little bit more like happy and laughy and whatnot. And it's nice to still have something that I can take to feel outside of my normal self because I think the reason why people like alcohol so much is because it's just the most accessible tool to them to feel outside of their normal sense of self and just different from how they usually do. And I think as humans, most of us like crave that experience of feeling different, like feeling just like taking us out of our like day to day, like something that's different, even if it does make us throw up, even if it makes us feel like shit the next day. Like we want to have that different kind of more unique experience in our lives. And alcohol just happens to be the most common tool to make that happen. But I'm legitimately so excited for what it looks like will be the prevalence of psychedelics in the US and hopefully around the world of more people becoming curious about these substances and being willing to try them. That will really, I think, open the door to just more curiosity and more acceptance that alcohol's not the only option. And Speaking of this, literally earlier today, I read a headline that like music festivals and concerts that are specifically targeting like young people, Gen Z, are selling like 25 to 30% less alcohol than to older crowds. And even, with the trend of like hard seltzers and like weed being legalized, like this new generation is not as into alcohol as the old one. And this might be a bit of a hot take, but I do think that alcohol will be to the young generation what cigarettes are to our current generation. Maybe not to the same extent, but I think people are opening their eyes to the fact that like this is something that can really damage you and just doesn't do you any good whatsoever. But that's just my 2 cents.
Honey, your 2 cents are worth more than a leprechaun's pot of gold. And
Thank you.
I
Thank
say
you.
that with all compliments and gleefulness because I've seen rainbows 2 days in a row now, and I think this is a good sign. I saw a double rainbow on Wednesday,
Wow.
another rainbow yesterday. And I could have sworn that on the interstate as I was driving home that we were in the rainbow where it began. And
Wow.
so,
Yeah.
uh, but hearing you say that, you're fucking right. It's not like there's any clinical trials going. These are the benefits of vodka and how it can help
No,
you.
exactly. Exactly. Like never, never in a million years. No, and it's funny because I've talked to friends who are very like hesitant about things like psychedelics. They're like, oh, I had a friend who took it and like he changed, like he was a different person afterwards, and I don't think it was like for the better. And I'm like, there are definitely situations where it's not a good thing. There are definitely people who should not take psychedelics. For example, when you sign up for one of these retreats or even these clinical trials, there's a pretty in-depth questionnaire and process for who gets accepted to these, and that's for a reason because certain people with pre-existing conditions and stuff should not do this stuff. And that's another big risk. That's tough to know if you're just trying to recreationally use these substances for the first time. But, in this example of my buddy being like, I don't want to try psychedelics because I had a friend who went really like off the cliff with it. And I'm like, okay, but how many people do you know struggling with alcoholism? Like, how many people do you know whose lives have been ruined from drinking because like that is just a disease that unfortunately they have, through alcohol. There's a lot of people like that, man. And it's frustrating because it's almost normalized to like the joke when I was in college was that everyone in college is an alcoholic, but like the definition of being alcoholic in college is like different for those 4 odd years because you're partying all the time, you're drinking, whatever. And yeah, it's ironic. It's pretty fucked up. And I definitely have most of my friends probably have continued drinking a lot post college. Like I only graduated a couple of years ago. And I'm one of the few who think stop drinking. And as soon as I stopped drinking, it almost felt like leveling up. Like I felt like I leveled up to a tier of drugs, and I'm like, okay, these are actually beneficial for me. These are drugs that I can see myself taking for the rest of my life and still getting good things out of. Like I'm going to be taking mushrooms until the day that I die, and hopefully that's a long way away. It's knock on wood. But it's like, I don't wanna be drinking for the rest of my life. I don't think anyone should be drinking for the rest of my life. People I know who are older and drinking are not, they don't have the best habits with it, like, yeah,
My evangelist Nelson, and you'll discover who she is when you read through my memoir, which I sent you earlier.
awesome.
Highly clairvoyant woman, super spiritual, had all gifts of the spirit and beyond that. Could could see the future and everything. She she always spoke about alcohol as being like a super depressant, and I know that it if you look it up medically, it is always written about as a depressant.
Yeah.
Even though in the way it's marketed, in the way it's advertised, you always see people with a drink in their hand and smiling. But she was always like, with her, big old clairvoyant spiritual self, she always cautioned against it because it's pretty and everything like that, but it has a way of bringing you down, even though at the same time it's making you feel like it's bringing you up. And so it doesn't matter how mainstream it is, how popular it is. If you're in your 20s, you're in college, or whatever age you're at, doesn't matter if all the kids are doing it. You got to be careful about how it treats you. I have literally scraped people up off the floor with what's known as delirium tremens. This means that the person has drank so damn much that their body is starting to reject the
Yeah.
alcohol.
It's literally fucking poison.
It is poison,
Yeah.
but it's also it's like their body's rejecting it, and so then they're also entering a withdrawal phase too. That's going to make them want to go and get more. But when you get to trembling and shaking like that, and alcohol, you're at the risk of like stroke, and all kind
Yeah.
like that. You've got to be careful with alcohol. It is not exactly what it seems. And the company selling this to you are just trying to make money, baby. They don't give a damn
Oh
about.
yeah. Like I said, alcohol is an institution. It's an institution almost as old as like the human race itself, and they will make their money. Something else actually that I realized when I got into experimenting more with other drugs, psychedelics, MDMA, stuff like that, was alcohol really makes us conflate the concept of like feeling really just fucked up and like forgetting what happens. Because on alcohol, the more fucked up you feel, the more hazy you feel, you brown out, you black out, whatever. But I started having experiences on other substances where I was like, oh, like I am fucked up, but like I'm super happy. I feel amazing. I'm gonna remember all of this. Like I learned that there is a difference between feeling fucked up in like a really fun, like crazy way, and like not having to forget that experience or have a really terrible like blackout or memory loss. Like that was a pretty big eye opening thing for me, and the fact that like we just take those two things for granted as one because alcohol just causes those two things in parallel every time, whereas a lot of other drugs not necessarily the same thing.
Right, man. Because when I was doing that LSD down in Puerto Vallarta, oh, I can remember the whole trip. It was like I said, it was a
Yeah,
20
exactly.
that shit at 9 p.m. One night I wasn't sober till 9 p.m. the next night. And I was like, super fucked up, but I didn't like necessarily, it wasn't like bad. There's nothing to regret, the next day. And I can remember what the fuck,
Right.
was very present in the moment. And so if I had to pick, I would rather do LSD than to drink, you know,
Yeah.
if I had to. I don't drink a whole fucking lot anymore like I used to.
Hmm.
I mean, a whole week could go by without me even touching the wine and the alcohol, in my cabinet or
Nice. That's
like
good.
I'm more concerned about having a big fancy wine glass you drink out of than what the fuck goes in it actually. So, which is a huge thing because I grew up in the South. Then they started me drinking when I was like 5. They
Yeah.
they filth down here in Louisiana.
Yeah. I
Right.
bet.
I want to know. I'm gonna switch gears here. There's something. Is it 2CB? Is that how you say this?
Yes. Yeah. It's the number two and the letters C and B.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah, great question. So 2CB it's a synthetic psychedelic, so it doesn't occur naturally. It was made in a lab, but it was created by this guy, Alexander Shulgin, who is kind of like the godfather of psychedelics. Like he synthesized MDMA and invented pretty much like hundreds of psychedelics for the first time. And 2CB was one of like his favorite drugs. And it's a psychedelic, but it's different from a lot of other psychedelic compounds because instead of being more kind of like introspective and more inward, I would describe it as like a party psychedelic. And so a lot of people will compare it to candy flipping, which is taking LSD and MDMA at the same time. And I can see why people describe it that way, but it definitely feels different. But it's like you can take 2CB and you can, trip and hallucinate and like see all these things, but it also has some really intense like time dilation and dissociative properties, but you can also like party on it. Like it makes you want to party and have a good time. And between like all those effects and the fact that it's also like it's really hard to find real 2CB, it's just I think a really just fascinating and really fun chemical. And yeah, it's definitely like one of my favorites at this point, and I think one that a lot of people like should try because well, not should, but I think it's an interesting one to try because it has less of these experiences of like how people might have bad trips on LSD or shrooms because it is very introspective, whereas 2CB does have this component that almost feels like an upper as well and makes you feel like really happy as a result. The tough thing with 2CB is most like 2CB that you would buy from a dealer, it's not the real deal. It'll generally be like a combination of an upper and a downer. So going back to some guy in a kitchen, like cooking up your drugs, they might combine something like cocaine and ketamine. They might put some like caffeine, some LSD in there. And at this point, I've tested like over a dozen batches of 2CB, and most of them are not the real deal, unfortunately. And usually it's dyed like bright pink. Like natural 2CB is not, it's just like a white powder, but the pink dye, it's almost like a brand. Like it's like, Coca-Cola, like you see the logo, you see the brand. Like 2CB has this brand of being this really fun party drug, and it's only now getting a little bit more prevalent in the US. It's really big in South America and pretty big in Europe. And like this bright pink color that it has is like part of the 2CB brand that people associate with the effects. And it's just like food dye. And usually when it's dyed pink, it's usually not the real deal.
Yeah, I think I saw something on like that Vice thing on YouTube about like
Yeah.
cocaine or pink, whatever. Okay, so last two questions before we get over into our dad jokes.
Mm.
You've mentioned a couple of times throughout the show, Yuki, that there are just some drugs that you just have like a hard no to. So I want you to tell us what the drugs that you're like, fuck you, middle
Yeah.
finger, and then I want you to list every drug you've ever done.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. My joke when I tell people that, I'm like into the drug space and whatnot, I'm like, there's three drugs I will never do: heroin. Yeah, I think it's heroin, fentanyl, and alcohol is what I tell people. The alcohol is as a bit of a joke. No, but like the ones you hear about being really gnarly, like generally are like no heroin, no meth, no like crack cocaine, opioids, not a thing. Honestly, yeah, to be safe, just like psychedelic compounds in general are the main category I would say I enjoy. And within those, for ones I've done, so first non-alcohol drug I did was a little bit of weed, but in my memory, it's more like LSD. Did a lot of LSD for a while, and then transitioned more to doing shrooms. 2CB, we talked about that. I've done ketamine several times. What am I forgetting? I've done cocaine a few times. Honestly, wasn't too impressed with it personally, and it's definitely a more damaging drug as well. It's not one I ever do anymore. Yeah, and I would say the main remaining one that I is on my list to try is DMT, because I've heard it's like a very different psychedelic experience from anything else, but that's kind of like a bookmark that I have. But to be honest, I'm very happy with like doing shrooms on a pretty regular basis. Oh, and MDMA as well. I think it's a really fun and nice drug. That one you just have to be careful with. You can't take it too often. Like I'll take it, maybe like twice a year or something, just to play it safe.
You have a lot of self-control because even for the fact that you could just limit yourself to that, like you mentioned earlier, how you stopped drinking for 2 months to see how it's going to go. Most people don't have the capacity or the where, the with, or the all to cease themselves from doing something for as long as they determine that they're going to do it. You try to take away a bottle from people or sex
Yeah.
from people or I don't know, whatever it is their vice is, whatever it is that they just feel that they have a codependent attachment to, they couldn't stop it for a year, for
Yeah.
2 months, for 3 months. They can't see their lives without it.
No, and that's something that's also especially tough about, the information that I'm trying to spread and teach people is like everyone's body and mind reacts a little bit differently to like addiction and into different drugs. And it's really hard to know what you're getting yourself into with any of these. Like, I mean, I have friends who've been addicted to like every conceivable drug under the sun, and everyone's just a little bit different. And so it's really tough. Like something that we talk a lot about is just responsible usage of drugs, and that's through also just like very logical like steps and things that you can implement. Like, when you buy drugs, like don't buy more than you need. Buy some for like one or two uses, but you don't want to be the guy who has like 5 grams of coke in your like bedside drawer and that's just there and you're like, oh sure, I'll do some. Like that's not good. Like you can be smart and responsible and do those things. Like that will take you pretty far, but truly, I think some people like can be kind of predisposed to addiction, and that's something that I don't know, I definitely like struggle with thinking about. I don't know how to handle that if someone tries a drug for the first time and they get addicted to it. Like I don't know what to do about that, and that's something that genuinely scares me.
Yo, just remember who you were before you had all of these vices, before you started drinking alcohol, before you started doing drugs, before you started working places and you knew how to go there and to bury your emotions in long work days. I don't care how innocent it looks or how much society applauds it. Overworking is an addiction.
Yep.
Putting too much attention to your fucking children or an addiction. You know, staying at the gym 50 hours a fucking week is an addiction. Remember who you were before you had all these
Yep.
things at your disposal, before you go run out there and have sex with people, before you can go spend all your paycheck up at the fucking happy hour. You used to, when you had bad feelings or bad emotions, you just fucking grabbed the pillow and cried and went to fucking sleep. You didn't have all these things at your disposal. So just get back to the basics and remember who you are. Just be under the stars and just set in your emotions and
Yep.
stop hiding them in things. Because I really think a lot of this boils down to a lack of self-love. I think a reason why a lot of people spike drugs is because they don't love themselves. It's people who are high on the vibrational scale and they're really pursuing spirituality are not going to do things to hurt people. When people hurt people, it all boils down to a disconnection between people and their spirituality and a lack of self-love. And all the activities that you can go out there and do are not going to fix you until you get back to the basics, bitch. Okay.
No, totally. Yeah, like amen to that. Like it all has to happen inside. Like your happiness, your experience of life, like it all has to be internal, regardless of your external situations, how much money you have, things like that. Like those things can definitely help and hurts, but it all starts and ends with you, like deep inside of you.
Oh, so, yo, Yuki and I have taken y'all to church and back. We have preached the gospel of
Yes, we have.
the truth of life and resilience today. It's a Friday morning as we're recording this, and it is Pride Month as we're recording this. So happy Pride to all my queer
Happy
people,
Pride.
all of our beautiful, delicious allies and chosen family. And Yuki's a part of my chosen family. So he has a Japanese name, and y'all know how I love me some fucking Japan. I'll be there in a couple of months hanging out in Harajuku and Kinchicho and all the different places I like to roll through when I'm there. And so now this brings us to our dad joke portion of the show. Y'all know I do these dad jokes because the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast is only tackling darker and darker topics because the world is getting darker and darker. We're going to be that beam of light. At the end of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, in the actual books, not the way they fucked it up in the movies when they're outside the gates of Mordor, they finally made it up there by Mount Doom, and they're creating that distraction so Frodo and Samwise can get on up the mountain and do what they need to do. In the book, it reads that the shadow that was cast from that evil fucking eye from Sauron threw shadow over everybody. The only person who was not affected by the shadow was Gandalf the White. He still had his staff because the Witch King did not actually burn it up in Gondor the way they made it look in the movies. The only person with any strength, with any fucking sense, and who was still able to keep their composure was the White Wizard. Okay. And so that is what we do here. We are that beacon of white light, even when all other lights have gone out. I hear you preaching, Galadriel. When all other lights have gone out, we here at the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast are still going to be that light. And so these dad jokes are a part of that light. And today they are brought to you by womansday.com. First joke: what did the tomato say to the other tomato during a race?
I'm rolling past you. I don't know.
I know you got this one. No, he simply
Um,
said,
I don't know, something like I'm saucing on you or something terrible. No, that's terrible. That's definitely not it.
he just said, catch up.
Ah. That was a good one. That was a good one.
Right. Number two, why didn't the skeleton get a prom date?
Ooh, I think I saw this one recently, but I have the most terrible, like, short-term memory. Ah, He didn't have, like, because he didn't have the guts to ask.
Right.
I can't take credit for knowing that one. I did remember it. I'm terrible at riddles. My girlfriend slash partner is definitely the better puzzle solver.
Hey, no, I take that as a sign that this conversation was meant to happen since you just saw it recently, and that's the one I chose out of many.
No, exactly.
That's confirmation. I don't take things for granted. I see the sign there, and I know you do too. Thank the spirit for that one. Final one. Why shouldn't you write with a broken pencil?
It's inconvenience.
Because it's pointless.
Nice. That was good. I do love me some dad jokes, genuinely. The dad joke subreddit is actually one of my favorites.
Absolutely. So, um, y'all, you can find the Modern Day Hippie podcast wherever you get your podcasts. They're on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. If there's any other social media, you can let them know right now as I'll let you close us out. You can go ahead and give people the last word. I'll put your social media in the showy notes as I always do. And thank you for coming on the show. Take us away. You can say anything you want about anything at all, ever.
I mean, first off, thank you so much for having me. This has been a really fun and insightful conversation. So I appreciate you, and just keep up what you're doing. Like you're doing a very good thing, and we need, more of these vibes, more of this energy in the world. So thank you for that. And finally, just a reminder to everyone listening, um, there are other options, other substances. You don't have to drink if you don't want to. And there are ways to experiment with other substances in a safe and responsible way. I just make sure that you prioritize your safety and your health above all else, and do all these things with intentionality. Don't let anything get away from you. Make sure that you are the owner of your habits, of your reality, of your life, and it'll be tough to go straight from there. So thank you guys for listening. And yeah, you can find us on all platforms under Modern Day Hippie. Just look for the trippy looking smiley face on all the platforms.
It is a beautiful face. It makes me happy just to look at it. It'll probably end up being the logo for this show. It's quite gorgeous. Quite gorgeous. All right. Thank you, Yuki.
Thank you so much, man. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you all so much for taking time to listen to the Sex, Drugs, and Jesus podcast. It really means everything to me. Look, if you love the show, you can find more information and resources at sexdrugsandjesus.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Feel free to reach out to me directly at Devanin at sexdrugsandjesus.com and on Twitter and Facebook as well. My name is Devanin, and it's been wonderful being your host today. And just remember that everything is going to be all right.